Welcome to Doc NYC and the special Q&A for Nasrin. I'm Tom Powers, the festival's artistic director. Pleased to have with me the film's director, Jeff Kaufman, joining me from Los Angeles. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much.
So we are talking 2 days before our festival begins. For context, you and I did a conversation about 2 weeks ago, pre-recorded for this. But then we had reason to come back and do this fresh one today. And it's a very happy reason, which is that over the weekend, Nasrin Sotoudeh was let out from prison. Can you give the context to how long she'd been in prison and what was the situation that enabled her to get out this weekend?
Of course. While we were filming, we filmed secretly in Iran with crews that followed Nasrin around very carefully, all in coordination with Nasrin, and not connected to our filming. But while we were filming, in June 2018, Nasrin was arrested. Soon after, her husband was arrested and held in prison, and he's still now home on bail. And after that, her daughter was actually picked up and interrogated as well. Nasrin was sentenced to 38 years in prison and 148 lashes, as obviously an attempt to not only intimidate her, but intimidate other people like her. In August of this year, she went on a hunger strike, protesting health conditions in Iranian prisons, calling for all political prisoners to be released home under these conditions due to the threat of COVID-19. She held that hunger strike for 46 days and really endangered her health. For a while, she was in a hospital. She was sent back to Levine with no treatment. And then about 2 weeks ago, they told her, we're releasing you. And they put her in a car, and instead of releasing her, they drove her to a worse prison farther out of town. She entered into some negotiations with prison authorities. They came to her. And on Saturday, after some back and forth, she was released on medical leave. It's great news. Her health is still really, really, really fragile. I'll just say one more thing. A couple months ago, she received this major judicial award in Germany. And rather than talk about herself when she received the award through a friend, she smuggled out a statement from prison saying, please dedicate this award to prisoners on death row now in Iran. And when she was released on Saturday, the first thing she did was she called the world's attention to other political prisoners in Iran, other activists. So that's Nasrin. She takes what happens to her and she tries to push it out there for others.
Do you have any insights into what caused this? I mean, it seems capricious, right? A couple of weeks ago, they were taking her to a worse prison. Now they're letting her out. Do we have any idea what's behind these moves?
Well, I mean, there is a new head of the judiciary who may even be more conservative than the previous one. But, something that Nasrin's husband just often says, we've been talking on and off, continually for a long time. And he says, just the most important thing is public pressure, keeping the pressure on. And we've been in touch with so many amazing people, groups like Amnesty International, PEN America, individual groups like Friends of Nasrin, and folks connected to the film who have made this very public. And authoritarian regimes do pay attention. And so I think that's a major part of it. But the work doesn't stop with Nasrin being home on medical leave. The work has to continue.
So let me take a step back. How did you, based in Los Angeles, come to direct this film?
I'd done a number of other films about human rights in Iran, a couple with Amnesty International, a couple individually. And one film was about the persecution of the Baha'i faith in Iran. And if you know about that, you know that young Baha'is, Baha'is in general are treated horribly. They can't own business. They are often arrested, sometimes executed. They can't go to college. And Nasrin, a Muslim woman, has been a great champion of religious minorities in Iran. And she represents other people I came to know who risked everything to help their Baha'i neighbors. And I love that idea of people from one faith reaching out to another faith to support each other. In the context of America, that was very meaningful at the time. And also, I think the idea of the strong woman fighting for women's rights and human rights in Iran, supported by as my wife and partner, Marsha Ross, says, Nasrin's Marty Ginsburg, her husband, Reza, just spoke to me so strongly about lessons that we need for this country as well. And I think the fact that Nasrin went out on medical leave the same day that Joe Biden was officially declared president of the United States, there's a wonderful connection there. So, grassroots work, supporting and fighting for and putting your life at risk for the rights of others, that's what made us want to do this film. And I think that's a powerful lesson for today.
So because of your past work in Iran, you're not able to travel there. So you were working with crews based locally. Can you talk more about how that worked and, the risks they were undertaking and, and how you thought through those risks?
Yeah, we try to be very careful. I can't tell you how many times we spoke to Nasrin and said, hey, if you want to stop this project now, we'll stop it. We don't want to put you at risk. We don't want to put anyone else at risk. And when you make a documentary, everyone signs a very detailed legal release. That's part of the process. Everybody in the film that you see, you'll see people who, are doing incredibly gutsy things. And they all signed releases, detailed in Farsi, knowing what they were doing. We worked with some crews who needed to stay anonymous. Obviously, if I'd flown into Iran, A, they wouldn't let me. And B, if I had a big American crew, that wouldn't be a very discreet way to do this project. So these really remarkable and talented people followed Nasrin around, and not just, like in private meetings, but to art galleries and to a theater that looks like you're in Greenwich Village, and out in protests, walking to a neighborhood bookstore, really capturing a life in Iran that I think people don't often see. I will say that one of the people who was a cinematographer for us, not because of our project, but had to flee the country. One of the women who gave us photographs, there's this wonderful series of photographs of Nasrin in handcuffs coming out of court in 2012, not having seen her husband for years in person, and putting her arms around Reza and kissing him, right? It's a beautiful, breaks your heart. The woman who took those pictures is now in prison. She attended a conference about women in politics, and they arrested her. So these are amazing people. I think, and it's very moving, the symbiotic connection of democracy in our two countries. It's chilling.
So your film is just making its way out onto the film festival circuit this fall. Can you talk about what your hopes are for it and what you're already starting to hear from people?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're immensely grateful for Doc NYC to show Nasrin. It means a lot. And we're pleased that there's going to be a virtual cinema release of Nasrin on December 18th through Kino Marquee. So that's my chance to mention that. And people can find out.
Plug in. Yeah.
Watch how I do it right here. And of course, they can find out more about that and other aspects of the film and Nasrin's life by going to nasrinfilm.com, which I'm sure you've done many times. But more than that, first of all, Nasrin's release is very tenuous, as is her health. And so having people see the film, get to know the film, and participate is a process in supporting her and others like her. But, Nasrin was really inspired by people like Nelson Mandela, who, when he came out of prison, and also, like John Lewis, who I had a chance to meet several times, people who saw their cause, not just for themselves, but as a universal cause. And that's always what Nasrin wanted. And I think that we really need to be reminded of how important women's rights and human rights is right now. And I hope that this film can be, a way of continuing her voice and sparking that kind of inspiration and support from others. That's, I think, what motivated her to do this. And the other thing, if I could just mention, is, thank God the Biden administration is thinking of reconnecting to the nuclear accord that was negotiated with Iran. We always wanted this film to help humanize the Iranian people, to see a side of Iran that you don't normally see. And I think that's a really pertinent message right now.
So you were seeing Los Angeles receiving footage.
Yes.
Can you talk about any, piece of the film that really stood out to you or really made you, happy or feel like it had come together when you got it?
Sure. I can't describe the process of getting film out of Iran, but you can imagine that it was complicated and not always the same path each time. And sometimes I would request things. So for instance, Nasrin's very close to the acclaimed filmmaker Jafar Panahi. They won the Sakharov Prize together. He featured her in his film Taxi. If you haven't seen Panahi's work, it's just amazing. And I kept saying, oh, I would love to have Panahi in our film. Is that possible? And then I was told soon, right before her release, oh, we did a sequence with Jafar Panahi. We'll be getting it to you. And then it didn't come. It didn't come. And she was in prison. And no one could find it. And there was other stuff on it. And then Reza, her husband, was arrested in September. And he was held in prison until December. When he came out, miraculously, he found this drive of footage. You'll love Reza. The first thing he said when he came out of prison, we talked to him the next day, he said, I'm so sorry if my being in prison interfered with your film. But anyway, we got this like a month later, because it still took a way to get out, we got this drive. And not only did it have the footage with Jafar Panahi, and just an amazing connection between the two, but there was this other sequence, a couple of sequences, but there's one sequence we saw about a woman who had put on a play under the prison of Errol Dorfman's Death and the Maiden. And just the idea of someone putting on Death and the Maiden in Iranian prison, which is about holding your torturer accountable, is an amazing concept. But in this new batch, we got the second half of that, where they actually went to the theater and saw it produced and saw a tribute to the woman who had since died, who had put on this prison play. But for me, it was like a year gap between those two pieces, but we could sew them together in the film. Nasrin's daughter, Merva, said the making of the film was as dramatic as the film itself. And so I hope that you can share in some of that.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, I mean, you've talked about the importance of pressure for people who see this film, besides following up on NasrinFilm.com. What are people in the United States, able to do to have any effect?
Well, if you go to, again, I'm not pitching the website this time, but if you go to NasrinFilm.com, you'll see a petition from PEN America that you can sign on Nasrin's behalf. There's also live links to a lot of human rights groups who are supporting not just Nasrin, but other people like Nasrin who are less famous, but who need our support. I also think, I've been saying this a lot, but it's really important to apply the same standards to our own country. I mean, for me, again, thank God Joe Biden won, but we have to demand human rights and accountability in this country, because otherwise, what moral voice do we have? Just remember that this is an ongoing struggle. The struggle for women's rights in Iran goes back like 100 years, and these amazing women keep getting together and making progress, and then getting shoved back and making progress. So, it's an arc in both countries, and we can be a part of it.
Well, we're really proud to show the film at Doc NYC. For the viewers, if you want to tell your friends who aren't able to see it during the festival dates, it's going to open in virtual cinemas on December 18th through Kino Lorber. Jeff Kaufman, thank you for this film, and thanks for coming back today.
Thanks so much, Tom. Take care.